The storm came without warning, a sudden upheaval of wind and rage that tore through the canyon like a living beast. Rain sliced down in sheets, turning dry earth into rivers of mud, and lightning fractured the sky with bone-white light. In the chaos, the herd scattered. Hooves thundered, muscles strained, instincts screamed. Somewhere in the frenzy, Lyria fell behind. Her sides heaved with effort. She was heavy with Foal due any day, but not today. Not in the storm. Not alone. She stumbled through the narrow canyon pass, slick rocks giving under her hooves. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps, nostrils flaring wide. Behind her, the wind howled like wolves. Ahead, only darkness and the sharp scent of pine. She called out once, high and thin, hoping for a familiar voice. None answered. Thunder cracked again, and this time her legs gave way. She dropped to her knees in the mouth of a clearing, shivering, soaked, and shaking with pain. A contraction gripped her. Sure. Wrong. Was too soon. Or too late. She couldn't tell anymore. The pain came again, seizing her body in a brutal wave. Her ears pinned back. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. She twisted, trying to rise, but her limbs were useless beneath her. The storm raged on, uncaring. Somewhere a hawk cried. Somewhere a coyote laughed. She was alone. No, not alone. A shape stood on the ridge, cut against the stormlight like a shadow carved from stone. Massive. Still. Watching. Kill. She recognized him instantly, every wild horse did. The lead stallion of their herd, infamous not just for his power but his distance. He ruled with a thunderous authority, cold and unquestioned. He had never been cruel but never tender either. He was the mountain wind, untouchable, unpredictable. He shouldn't have followed her. He shouldn't be here. And yet he was. Lightning split the sky again, and in the flickering light she saw the tension in his body. Muscles coiled beneath soaked hide. Mane plastered to his neck. Ears pitched forward. Something in his stance wasn't anger. It wasn't dominance. It was hesitation. She tried to call to him, but her voice cracked. Another contraction rolled through her, fiercer this time. Her body writhed against the earth. The foal wasn't moving. Panic clawed at her chest. She had seen this before, in other maras. The wrong position. The wrong time. And always the same tragic end. Her mind screamed at her to run, to push, to do something, but she was frozen. The storm outside had become a storm within. Kale descended. No charge. No roar. Just silence and deliberate steps as he made his way into the meadow. The rain softened around him as if even the sky dared not touch him now. His breath steamed in the cold air. His eyes, sharp as obsidian, locked on hers. For one aching heartbeat, neither moved. Then Lyria lowered her head, no longer in challenge or fear, but surrender. She had nothing left. Kale circled her, slow, methodical, nostrils flaring. He didn't nudge. Didn't bite. Just watched. Studied. Evaluated. He saw the strain in her flanks. The swell of her belly. The way she trembled, not from fear but failing strength. And then, he did something no one could have predicted. He dropped to his knees. He laid down beside her. It defied every instinct. Every rule of the wild. Stallions didn't lower themselves. Not beside a laboring mare. Not in the open, not exposed, not when predators hunted on the edges of storms. But Kale did. He pressed his body close to hers, not to claim but to steady. She gasped as another wave tore through her. She tried to push, to shift, but the angle was wrong. The foal was stuck. The panic returned, vicious and blinding. Her limbs kicked out weakly. Kale stood. His great head bent low. He sniffed her side, then nipped at her haunch, not cruelly but with purpose. She flinched, then shifted. Another nudge. Another adjustment. He was repositioning her. With every nudge, every push, she moved closer to the right angle. Her instincts, frayed but not broken, took over. She braced. She pushed. The effort tore a scream from her lungs. Her neck arched, muscles convulsing. Kale stood beside her now, head high, scanning the tree line, every nerve on edge. He could smell the blood, the pain, the coming life, and the watchers. Eyes in the dark. The predators had arrived. A flicker of movement near the rocks, silent and low. Then another. Wolves. Not a large pack but hungry. Drawn by the smell of labor and the taste of weakness. Kale didn't move. He didn't charge. Not yet. Not while she was vulnerable. Not while the foal was still inside her. Lyria bore down again. She felt the shift. The foal was turning. A whimper escaped her. Another contraction. Stronger. Sharper. And then relief. A rush of wetness. A collapse. A tiny, trembling form spilled into the grass. Alive. The foal twitched once, then breathed. Lyria exhaled in a sound that was almost a sob. But there was no time to rest. A low growl rolled through the trees. Yellow eyes gleamed in the dark. Kale stepped forward. No hesitation now. He was a storm of muscle and fury as he thundered toward the shadows. He reared, hooves lashing out. The first wolf darted away but not fast enough. Kale struck it hard in the shoulder. A yelp. A crash. The others scattered but regrouped. He stood his ground. Again they circled. Again he drove them back. He was a beast reborn, no longer the cold-eyed ruler of a herd, but a protector, feral, fearless, bleeding. One caught him across the chest. A gash opened, dark blood pouring. Still he fought. Every step forward was a warning. Every scream a promise. Until finally the wolves, confused, wounded, overpowered, fled. The storm too began to pass. Silence crept in. Kale stood swaying, blood dripping from his chest. He looked back once, to Lyria, to the foal now nestled against her. And then he collapsed. Thunder echoed faintly in the distance, but the true storm had passed. Lyria dragged herself forward, every inch an effort, until her muzzle brushed his mane. She didn't understand what had changed. Why he had come. Why he had stayed. But she knew one thing. Whatever Kale had once been, he was something different now. Something more. And as the first pale light of dawn broke over the ridge, she lifted her head and watched the world change with it. She didn't know if he would wake. But she knew, this was only the beginning. A hush fell over the clearing, broken only by the steady rhythm of rain dripping from the pine boughs above. The storm had softened to a whisper, its fury spent, but its consequences lingered like bruises beneath the skin of the earth. The air smelled of blood and wet grass, of birth and battle. The foal lay curled beside Lyria, still slick with afterbirth, his breath shallow but steady. Tiny ears flicked. Trembling limbs twitched with the first hints of life. Lyria pressed her muzzle to his side, breathing him in, his scent raw and new, unmistakably hers. Relief flooded her body, hot and thick, threatening to unravel what little strength she had left. But she could not collapse. Not yet. Because Kale hadn't moved. He lay a few strides away where he'd fallen after fending off the wolves. His great chest barely lifted with breath. Blood darkened his foreleg and chest, oozing from a jagged gash near the shoulder. The crimson stained the grass around him, soaking into the ground like an offering. Lyria dragged herself closer to him, legs shaking, her flanks still spasming with the aftershocks of labor. She nudged his side. Once. Twice. Nothing. The panic she had forced away returned in an instant, clawing up her throat. She nosed under his neck, lifting gently, urging him. His body was still warm. His breathing shallow but real. Don't leave, she whispered in the only way wild horses could, through breath, through touch, through presence. A flicker. His ear twitched. Barely but enough. She exhaled sharply and lay beside him, pressing her body close to his, the same way he had done for her. A breeze stirred the treetops and rustled the grasses. The foal sneezed, tried to shift his legs and flopped helplessly to his side. There was no safety yet. No shelter. The wolves might return. Others might come. She needed Kale. Not just as protector, but as something else now. Something she hadn't realized until he risked his life for hers and their foals. She didn't know what it meant, but it gripped her heart with something fierce. Far above them, the clouds began to thin, revealing a sliver of moonlight. The clearing lit up in shades of silver and blue, like a dream that teetered on the edge of vanishing. Lyria pushed herself up. Her legs trembled beneath her, and she stumbled once before finding her balance. She walked, slow, cautious, to her foal, nudged him again. His ears perked at the scent of her, and with a strength that defied his size, he began to wriggle toward her warmth. She stood over him, let him nuzzle against her belly, and encouraged him softly with quiet breaths. It took time. Every moment was a small battle. He rose, wobbled, collapsed, tried again. Lyria stayed patient, steady, even as her own limbs threatened to give out. Behind her, Kale stirred. She turned sharply. A groan escaped him, deep and gravelly. One leg moved. Then the other. He lifted his head an inch before letting it drop again with a pained grunt. But he was trying. Relief flooded her again, mingled this time with awe. She had seen Kale fight challengers, storms, hunger, but never weakness. Never injury. Never this close to death. He was a legend made flesh, and now he bled into the soil like any other. And still he fought to rise. He opened one eye, unfocused at first. It darted toward her, then the foal. He didn't speak, stallions didn't, but something shifted in that gaze. A softness. An acknowledgement. She stepped toward him, her nose brushing his cheek. His skin twitched beneath the touch. Then behind them both, a branch snapped. Lyria jerked her head toward the sound, ears rigid. Kale's head lifted higher. From the shadowed edge of the clearing, a figure emerged, not a wolf but a scavenger. A lone coyote, thin and calculating, drawn by the smell of blood. Kale struggled to stand. He grunted, hind legs kicking weakly. No, Lyria thought, stepping between him and the coyote. Her foal squeaked, alarmed. The coyote crept closer. Kale thrashed again, barely lifting his shoulder. He was too weak. Lyria snorted, then bared her teeth, a rare thing for a mare. She pawed the earth, tossed her head. Her body ached from labor, her muscles screamed, but she was not helpless. She was a mother now. She charged. The coyote yelped and bolted. Lyria didn't chase. She stood tall and still, watching the shadows. Then slowly she returned. Kale was watching her. And for the first time she saw something in him she had never seen before. Not authority. Not control. But respect. She lay beside him again, and they stayed like that as the moon climbed higher. Time passed in silence. Eventually the foal stood. He teetered, nearly fell, then took a step. Then another. He made his way, slow and unsure, to Kale's side and pressed his tiny muzzle into the stallion's neck. Kale blinked. The foal let out a tiny snort and curled up beside him. Lyria watched, heart aching in the best and worst way. Kale closed his eyes. She did too. The night deepened. The trees held their breath. And in that fragile, perfect stillness, something old and sacred bound them together, not just as stallion and mare or protector and protected, but as a family. By morning the world would ask more of them. The herd. The wild. The future. But for now, they had each other. And the dawn was still a promise. By morning, the wind had shifted. The scent of the herd rode on it, faint but unmistakable. Lyria raised her head, ears forward, muscles tense with recognition. The others were near. Perhaps a mile, perhaps less. Their presence pulsed through her blood like a forgotten melody. But alongside it came another scent, sharper, unfamiliar. It smelled of change. Kale still lay where he'd fallen, though the bleeding had slowed and scabbed. His eyes opened and closed in intervals, flickers of lucidity between waves of exhaustion. Lyria stood over him again, watching, waiting. Her foal, now steadier on his feet, nursed briefly before bounding toward a patch of tall grass, emboldened by the light. But they all felt it. A tension in the air. The challenge was coming. Kale sensed it first. His ears pinned back. He tried to stand again, pushing against the earth with a guttural groan. His body trembled, his forelegs quaked, but he lifted himself halfway before crashing down once more. Lyria moved instantly, positioning herself between him and the distant ridge. It wasn't just instinct. It was protection. The ground vibrated. Soft at first, then louder. Hoofbeats. Not a herd. Not many. Just one. Heavy. Unhurried. And then he appeared. The stallion crested the ridge with an arrogance only youth could carry. Jet black, with a thick neck and a mane like fire, he moved with deliberate confidence. A challenger, not born of Kale's herd, not loyal to its old order. The kind who had watched from the outskirts, biding time, waiting for the moment when the king faltered. Now Kale had fallen. And the wild had taken note. The black stallion approached the clearing, his eyes locking on Lyria first, then flicking to the foal, and finally settling on Kale's broken form. He huffed once, a sound full of scorn and certainty. Lyria's ears twitched. She stepped forward, muscles taut, her body angled to shield the foal. The challenger snorted again, circling, testing. Not her. Go. Kale lifted his head. Their eyes met. Two forces, one rising, one fading. There was no ceremony. No dramatic charge. Just inevitability. The young stallion advanced, puffed himself larger, made a series of sharp, snorting threats. Kale rose halfway again, tried to scream, but his voice cracked mid-air. The effort nearly crushed him. The challenger moved closer. Close enough to nudge Kale with his muzzle. Not a bite. Not a kick. Just a simple gesture. You're done. Lyria's heart pounded. Her hooves dug into the earth. The desire to defend Kale nearly overtook her, but even she knew what this meant. In the wild, stallions rose and fell. To interfere was to curse them both. Kale let out a rattled breath and closed his eyes. He didn't fight. The black stallion turned. Not to leave but to claim. He stepped toward Lyria. She stood her ground. He sniffed at her side, then at the foal. The little colt blinked, wide-eyed, confused by this stranger's interest. Cale opened his eyes once more. And then for the first time he made a sound, not a scream or snort or warning, but a deep, low whicker. A father's call. The foal turned from the challenger, trotted back toward Cale and curled up beside him. The black stallion paused. Something in his expression flickered, not rage but surprise. He didn't expect defiance from the newborn. Certainly not loyalty. Lyria followed her foal. She didn't bow her head. She didn't speak. She simply lay beside Cale again, placing herself squarely between him and the stallion who now technically ruled. And that, more than any scream, was her choice. The black stallion didn't like it. His ears flicked back. He tossed his head. He gave one last warning snort, final, annoyed, and then turned, vanishing back the way he came. He'd won. But not everything. Silence reclaimed the clearing. Cale's breaths came slow and shallow but steady. He'd lost the herd. Lost the title. But not them. And strangely it seemed to be enough. Lyria rested her head gently against his neck. For minutes there was only warmth. Grass swayed. The foal twitched in sleep. But time was running out. They couldn't stay here. The herd would move soon. The black stallion would push onward, expecting Lyria and the colt to follow. Cale, though healing, would not be able to keep up, if he could walk at all. She felt the weight of it settle over her. A choice no mare ever wished to make. The wild was brutal. Compassion was rare. To linger here with Cale meant exile. To return to the herd meant abandoning the stallion who had given everything for her and her foal. Her breath came faster. Her mind spun. She couldn't do both. But before she could decide, Cale stirred. He shifted his weight, lifted his head. With agonizing effort he got one leg beneath him. Then another. His muscles quivered. Blood crusted his chest. But he rose. Not tall. Not proud. Not like before. But upright. He looked at her, then the foal. Then toward the mountains beyond the trees. And he stepped forward. Only a few feet. A stumble, a near collapse. But a step. Lyria rose beside him. The foal followed, brimming with unearned confidence, unaware of what the moment truly meant. Cale didn't look back. Not toward the ridge. Not toward the path the herd would soon take. He moved forward. Slowly. Painfully. Toward the unknown. Toward exile. Toward freedom. And Lyria followed. Because sometimes when stallions fall, something greater rises in their place. Something no crown of dominance can bestow. Something earned. And they would walk into it together. Whatever came next. The sun rose slow and golden over the high country, painting the jagged cliffs in firelight and chasing the frost from the tall grass. It had been days since they left the clearing, days marked by silence, by aching steps, by the quiet strength of survival. The stallion who once ruled a herd with the crack of his hooves and the power of his scream now walked at the edge of the world, each stride an act of defiance against the pain that still haunted his bones. Cale bore the scars of his fall like a crown, dark lines across his chest and shoulder, a stiffness in his gait, but something in his eyes had changed. Not dimmed. Not defeated. Transformed. Lyria had stayed by him, never questioning. And the colt, still unnamed, still full of clumsy wonder, had begun to run ahead and double back, his legs growing stronger with each mile, his trust rooted deeply in the stallion who had risked everything to deliver him into this world. They were alone now. No herd. No hierarchy. But in that solitude, they found something wilder and truer than the life they had left behind. Cale led them higher into the hills, where the trees gave way to wide meadows and granite outcrops, and wind rolled like water over the open earth. He didn't rush. Each step was measured. Intentional. He seemed to be searching, not for safety but for something deeper. A beginning. It was there, beneath the jagged cliffs of an ancient plateau, that they came upon the lost ones. 3 mares. One with a split ear and hollow eyes. One heavily pregnant. One with her foal half-starved beside her. They flinched at the sight of Cale. They'd known stallions before. Ones who ruled by teeth and force. But this one moved slow. No threat in his posture. No hunger for control. Only purpose. He stopped a distance away, head low, watching them with a kind of reverence. Lyria stepped forward, her body language soft, unthreatening. She exchanged breath with the youngest mare, the one with the foal, then nickered gently, inviting them to rest beneath the outcrop where wild rye grew thick and sweet. Cale didn't move until they were settled. Only then did he approach. Not with arrogance. With offering. He lowered his head near the foal, not touching, just close enough for the little one to smell him. The foal blinked, unsure. Then took a step forward. It was the beginning. That night, Kale stood watch as the Maras slept, his shadow long against the stones, the stars wheeling slowly above him. Lyria watched from a distance, her heart full. This was not the Kale the herd had known. This was not the king. This was the stallion he had become. Word of him began to travel, not by voice but by movement. The wild has a way of noticing. First came a crippled gelding, cast off by ranchers and half-healed from an old bullet wound. Then a pair of bachelor colts too young to challenge, too old to be ignored. They didn't join the way stallions usually gathered a band, through fear or blood, but by presence. They followed at a distance. Watch. Learn. Kale did not claim. He invited. And when a fire broke out in the south, low lightning striking dry brush and sending flames ripping across the grasslands, he led the lost through the smoke, circling back for the weak, the lame, those other stallions would have abandoned without a thought. He found water. He found shelter. He found the ones no one else would find. And they followed him, not because they had to, but because they chose to. By the time winter began to whisper through the trees, Kale's quiet herd had grown to 22. Not strong. Not fast. But free. Still, the past lingered like a shadow. Lyria knew it would only be a matter of time before the black stallion, the one who had taken Kale's place, heard the whispers. The wild was wide but not empty. And when it happened without warning. One morning, beneath a sky heavy with snow clouds, the black stallion appeared at the edge of their new territory. His body was thick with winter fur, his breath curling in clouds, his eyes gleaming with the need to assert dominance. He hadn't forgotten Kale. And Kale hadn't forgotten him. They stared at each other across a narrow valley, nothing between them but wind and memory. The herd tensed. The young colts bristled. The Maras moved closer together, their eyes darting between the two stallions like a pendulum counting down. Kale stepped forward. He no longer limped, not badly, but the evidence of his wounds still clung to his frame. The black stallion bared his teeth, waiting for the challenge, expecting the fight. But Kale didn't charge. He walked to the center of the valley. Stopped. Lifted his head and gave a sound, low, resonant, not aggressive. A call. The black stallion stilled. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a threat. It was a choice. Behind Kale, the herd gathered. Young. Broken. Mended. All of them watching. Not with fear. With faith. And for a long, breathless moment, the black stallion stood frozen. The fire in him flickered. He looked at the faces behind Kale. He saw that this was no longer about strength. Not anymore. This was about something else. Something the wild rarely honored. Wisdom. He snorted once hard. Then turned. And left. Not because he was weak. But because he saw something in Kale he could not take. The stallion who had once ruled with might had become something more powerful than dominance. He had become a leader. Not just of horses, but of hope. Lyria exhaled, tears brimming in the corners of her eyes. The foal, now grown into his legs, curious and strong, trotted to Kale's side, nuzzling him. Kale touched his muzzle to the colt's mane and turned to face the wind. The wild was still dangerous, still untamed. But he had carved something new into it. A place where the broken were welcome. Where the fallen could rise. Where strength was not measured in battle but in compassion. They called him many things in the seasons that followed. The Ghost King. The Wanderer's Stallion. The flame that did not burn but healed. But to Lyria he was only Kale. The stallion who changed everything.